Winning in Vegas sounds nice, especially for young money in that 5 car. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's fast. It's furious. And that's the track where every single crew chief and driver will put their chips at the end of the table to gamble for victory. And this weekend, that number 5 car was the one that came out on top with all of the money. Let's get into all that went down in Sin City. Number 1, Larson dominates. Kyle Larson dominated the Pennzoil 400 yesterday at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, holding off a hard-charging Tyler Reddick for the victory. Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, and Ty Gibbs rounded out your top 5. Kyle Larson, so fast when we come here to Las Vegas. Ever since he got to Hendrick Motorsports in 2021, his first race win with that team came at this track in 2021, which is the start of his championship run. Then last fall, Larson won the race and punched his ticket to the championship 4. He had a strong car that day. And yesterday, it wasn't anything different. Larson had the dominant car yesterday. From the moment he took the lead from Joey Logano on lap number 2, I'm like, yep, it's the Kyle Larson show here today because he's so good at this track. He's so fast. He always knows how to run the high line when he needs to, especially to try to preserve his right side tires, particularly that right rear when everyone's fighting loose at this racetrack. But he was dominant yesterday, sweeping both stages, stages 1 and 2. And the final stage, he was kind of on cruise control until the final couple of laps of the race when the 45 car, Tyler Reddick, was trying to put a little bit of a fight to him. He was giving it everything he had to catch that 5 car. Larson kept changing the lanes, high, low, middle, whatever lane he needed to do to take away the momentum of the 45 car coming from behind. Larson eventually was able to hold on and capture his first win of the season and lock himself into the playoffs. By the way, 3 races in a row this year, it's the Chevys. We've been talking about the new Toyota body and the Ford bodies and thinking these guys could probably put a little bit of it, will probably be a little bit ahead of the Chevy Camaros who are still in their 2022 body. Well, these two manufacturers have new bodies on their car. That's not the case. So far, it's been the bow ties. William Byron with the 500. Suarez at Atlanta last week in that photo finish. And this weekend, it was Kyle Larson. I mean, he was the best car yesterday by far. Even at times when he would restart a little bit middle of the pack, he was able to pick them off one by one and get back to the lead where he just stayed there all day. I mean, Cliff Daniels had that car hooked up for him yesterday. And I guarantee you, when we come back here in the fall, and if Kyle Larson is still part of the playoffs, everybody is going to need to figure out how can we beat this 5 car? Really, how can you beat Hendrick Motorsports the last few years at Las Vegas, particularly in the spring race? The last 4 spring races at Vegas have been won by a Hendrick car. Kyle Larson in 2021, Alex Bowman in 2022, William Byron won it last year, and this year it was Kyle Larson in the 5 car. I mean, he just had that thing on the rails yesterday. There was really nothing that stopped him. The only thing that could have stopped him was the tag team duo of the 2311 cars working together to try to pass him. But Larson did not let that happen, and he was able to hold on for his first win of the season. And I guarantee you, it will not be his only win of the year. So big congrats to Kyle Larson and the 5 team on their dominant win yesterday. Number 2, Reddick falls short. Tyler Reddick gave it everything he had yesterday, being runner-up to Kyle Larson at the very end of the race. Not only was he runner-up to Larson in the entire race, he was runner-up to him in both stages, and both stages he tried everything possible to try to take those stage wins and the lead away from Kyle Larson, but he just couldn't do it. The 45 car Tyler Reddick started a little middle of the pack, but slowly worked his way up through the field and pretty much had the best Toyota car yesterday. Yes, the Toyotas with the new bodies showed some speed, but the 45 car was by far the best of them, and he was the only one that could keep up with Kyle Larson, particularly when we had a little bit of a long run. The 45 was able to reel in the 5 car, but just couldn't find a lane to get by him. He tried everything. The lanes he was trying, bottom, middle, through 1 and 2, through 3 and 4, but it just wasn't enough because Kyle Larson kept seeing where the 45 was and covered the lane that the 45 was running in to slow down his momentum, prevent him from getting any advantage to get to the 5 car. So Reddick ultimately was a little upset about it. I mean, he was upset in general with the pit crew yesterday, and that's normally been kind of the Achilles heel for 2311 racing in general. If you think back to last year at the Nashville Super Speedway, had one of the fastest cars, but they didn't get one of the lugs tied on the wheel, and they lost the wheel on the track, and Reddick, instead of competing for the win, he finished multiple laps down that race. So think back to that race as a race that probably was one that the 45 team could have competed for if they didn't have that incident on pit road that made them lose the wheel. Well, the case was for yesterday, they had a little bit of a slow pit stop at the start of stage 2, and he fell from 2nd back to 16th. That was a problem for the 45 car yesterday, and even though he was able to work his way back up through the field and get up inside the top 2 and battle for the race win with the 5 car, you're left wondering what could have happened if they didn't have that miscue on pit road. What if they did not, what if they were too slow on the left side or the right side? Like, I think there was a problem with the jack, actually. What if they had jacked the car up on time? Like, what if they didn't have those issues? We could have been having a different story. We could have been having a different conversation, and we'd be probably talking about Tyler Reddick winning the race instead of Kyle Larson. So 2311 Racing kind of needs to get their head out of their rear ends and figure out how to put together a consistent race on pit road. But besides that, this was a big result for the 45 team. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the first 2 races, no top 10s, not a lot of stage points, and pretty bad finishes. I mean, both races he's been in wrecks. Not of his own doing, by the way, but he's been a victim of these wrecks and hasn't been able to get some momentum going. Well, yesterday, the finish and the points that he earned through both stages is momentum going forward. But if they hadn't made that pit road mistake in stage 2, what could have been for the 45 car? They've got to change that going forward. If they're going to be a possible contender in these playoffs, because I guarantee you we're going to see him in these playoffs and winning some races this year, they need to correct their pit road miscues, because if not, you're not going to get far this season, especially with how strong the Chevys have been. There are a few Chevy drivers that have yet to win, and who knows what the other Toyotas and the Fords can do once they get the handle of these new bodies in their race cars. But a great run yesterday for Tyler Reddick. He just fell a little bit short, particularly after that pit road miscue at the early part of stage 2. Number 3, solid runs for 3 drivers, Chastain, Gibbs, and Gregson. Starting off with Ross Chastain, the 1 car, guy who's been very good at Vegas ever since he's been with Trackhouse Racing since 2022. Chastain had a really good race car yesterday, running up inside the top 10. Seemed to have a pretty good race car in the long runs and seemed to be like the 3rd best Chevy out there. But during stage 2, green flag pit stops, he got caught for speeding. Had to serve a pass through, and he fell a lap down. But then we had a caution late in the stage with about 10 to go when Christopher Bell, he got loose, He lost the right rear tire early in the race. Christopher Bell lost the right rear tire. Chastain was one of the cars that took the wave around when everybody came to pit road, put on tires. Chastain took the wave around. We only had a couple laps left in the stage. He got back in the lead lap, put on the new set of tires, and came working his way back up through the field to the top 15. Then we had a late race yellow with about 30-plus laps to go when Coil of Joy went around in turns 1 and 2. And Chastain's team took the gamble and put on 2 tires to give them some track position and hope for a better finish from where they were running. I'd say the gamble paid off for that 1 team. It's their first top 5 of the season, and I guarantee you they're going to be fighting hard these next couple of weeks as you're going to see Chastain up further and further through the field of these tracks. Now we got away from drafting tracks. We're going to see what the 1 team's really capable of. Then a nice job by Ty Gibbs, his first top 5 of the season. He also, like a couple other drivers, has been on a rut the first 2 races considering they were drafting tracks. Well, this weekend, Ty Gibbs put together a solid run for the number 54 team. But late in the race, they had an incident as well where they fell behind in the pit stops at the end of stage 2 because apparently he did not have first gear, couldn't get it shifted into first gear, and had to get pushed out of the pits and fell deep in the pack. Oh, and he also had an uncontrolled tire that sent him to the rear of the field. But that didn't stop that 54 car. He came ripping through the field and got up inside the top 5, top 10 late in the race and came away with his first top 5 finish of the season. A lot of people are high on this kid, obviously, to win a race and make the playoffs this year, be a contender, because they've seen the maturity of him. I still need to see him put together a solid, clean race like the 45 car of Tyler Reddick. He can't have mistakes on pit road. I'm surprised they were able to continue and finish in the top 5 given that he didn't have first gear when he made those pit stops. And I was worried how he would be up through the gears on these restarts, but they didn't seem to hurt him whatsoever. And he was able to come away with a nice top 5 finish. And then you've got Las Vegas native Noah Gragson, his first year with Stewart-Haas Racing, a 6th place effort. Great job by that 10 team. I mean, this was an interesting race to see how Gragson would do with Stewart-Haas Racing because first 2 tracks are drafting tracks. He got a top 10 at the Daytona 500. Unfortunately, was a victim, one of the many victims in that lap 1 wreck last weekend in Atlanta. But this weekend, he came in thinking, this is my home track. I got to go out there and show Stewart-Haas Racing that they did not make a mistake bringing me on board, and I can show them what I've got. Well, yesterday, kind of hung around the top 20, but still ran strong early part of the race. And then when we got to the final stage, the 10 car showed some speed getting up inside the top 10 at the very end of the race and found himself racing inside the top 5 late in the race. And I'm like, this is amazing for Noah Gragson and how much this does for his confidence as well. And given what Stewart-Haas Racing has had to deal with this week after they had penalties for their windshield being confiscated by NASCAR, and both him and his teammate, Ryan Preece, unfortunately suffered a 25 or 35 point penalty, and they had a lot of their points redacted from Daytona and Atlanta, so that was quite unfortunate. But Gragson made up for it with this solid top 10 finish, finishing 6th yesterday. This gives him a lot of confidence going forward. I said it, like, when he was hired by Stewart-Haas Racing, like, this is the best equipment he's getting in the Cup Series, and let's see how he does going forward with this opportunity. But so far, 3 races in, you have 2 top 10s. Not a bad start to your tenure with a brand new racing, but nice job by Chastain, Gibbs, and Gragson with their top results yesterday. Number 4, Byron overcome the incident. William Byron had one of the best cars early on in the race yesterday. It looked like he could be one of the cars that could contend with Kyle Larson for the victory because Byron's the former winner here. He's also been very good at Vegas the last couple of years that we've raced here. Well, yesterday, late in stage number 1, he ran into a little bit of a setback. And when you looked at the setback, it was pretty big, actually, what was covering it. William Byron picked up a big trash bag on the front of his grill late in stage 1 yesterday, and he had to pit because the temperature rose to 350 degrees. Now, normally, when something covers the front of your grill, it can obviously speed the car and make it faster, but the bad part about it, if it's covering the entire grill, you could lose a lot. You're losing a lot of downforce, for one thing. And also, your water temperatures rise. They're skyrocket, and there's a chance you could blow the motor. So Byron had to come in, get the trash bag off the front of his grill. And matter of fact, there was actually, I think, a beer can that got stuck in the air filter the rest of the race. Because according to Rudy Fugle, they diagnosed it post-race and said, there was a beer can in our air filter, and I couldn't believe we ran the rest of that race. But Byron had to play catch-up all day long to try to get back up with the leaders. It took him quite a while, but he did get back on the lead lap at the end of stage 1, and eventually was able to find his way back inside the top 10 at the end of the race yesterday, finishing 10th. A nice comeback, but you also think, like Reddick, what would have happened if Byron didn't get that big trash bag on the front of his grill? Could he have contended with Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick for the victory? We'll never know. But unfortunately, it was a pretty big setback for Byron's chances to win, but he was able to rally for a solid finish. And number 5, Vegas action. The racing yesterday, very solid. Once again, 3rd year in a row, mile-and-a-half racing with this car, puts on quite a show. And yesterday, other than the domination from Kyle Larson, you saw some amazing battles for the lead when there were different guys up at the front. I mean, there was one point where Byron, up front leading before he had that trash bag incident, he went from 8th on the restart and was coming off turn 4 in the 7th spot and found himself leading the race going into turn 1 with the moves that he made. It was insane. The battles from 3rd on back for a lot of the race yesterday was outstanding. 3 wide, 4 wide. They even got 5 wide at one point. And these restarts also at Vegas are so chaotic and so much fun to watch. You don't know if these guys are going to walk out of the first couple of laps after restart without incident. And yesterday, there wasn't really any incidents on those restarts. Everybody, despite, all that bunched up racing, they were able to race each other hard, but also came out there in one piece. And that just shows you how smart these drivers are behind the wheels of these cars when they're running 3 and 4 wide on restarts for about 3 consecutive laps. I mean, it was just outstanding racing. And even when we got into a long run and everybody started to get spread out a little bit more, you did see handling become a factor, but there were some battles late in those long runs. And you saw some good battles within the top 10, within the top 15. There were guys that went on different strategies early in the race to stay out and take 2 tires or just gamble and just get to the end of the stage on 1 pit stop. That was for some of the guys, including last week's winner Daniel Suarez, after the caution on lap number 11 for Christopher Bell. Everybody came to pit road. They did as well, and then people pitted later. But Suarez was one of the cars that stayed out after the second caution when Chris Buescher lost the right front wheel in the process. But it was some very good action yesterday, even with the wind gusts that we had. It was windy this weekend in Las Vegas. I'm not sure how in the world these guys were able to hang on and not lose complete control of their cars. there were some handling issues. Guys were getting loose. Guys were pushing. That's what happens when the wind gusts were blowing. I mean, they were blowing up in the 60s and the 70s this week. I mean, my goodness gracious. It affected our cameramen so much that we didn't have the camera guys on the roof for Saturday's Xfinity race because it was blowing so fast. But they were able to return to their post yesterday thanks to the assistance of tethers, for one thing, and they were able to resume their camera duties for Sunday's race. So I want to say shout out to the camera crew for surviving the wind this weekend. Hopefully they were able to come out of there in one piece and didn't get blown away. I mean, for crying out loud, we're not in the Windy City, so it's just really odd to see that wind in Vegas. Although, you remember back to 2016 with Cole Pern and that tarp coming off and blowing right into his face? That's still hilarious to this day. But despite the wind, great action yesterday on the track, and I really enjoyed it yesterday. The first mile and a half race of the season that wasn't a drafting track. Drivers put on a good show yesterday. Now we continue race 2 of our 2-race West Coast swing, and we are off to Phoenix, Arizona next weekend, Avondale, Arizona. And we are debuting the new short track package for this year, where we are reducing a little bit portion of the diffuser in the back end of the car to try to help the drivers with a little bit of downforce in the rear end. And we're just trying to provide a lot of side-by-side action and some entertainment for the fans, because the first 2 years with this next-gen car on the short tracks, it's been a little bit of a challenge. Hopefully what we've worked on this offseason will put on a better show. And this race is also critical because this is Phoenix. This is the track where we're going to host the championship later in the year. So everybody that's coming to the track next weekend, they better bring their A game. They better bring their best in preparation to think about, here's what we learned to help us when we come back here in the fall, where one of us, we could be competing for a championship. You're going to have good handling race car, and you're going to need to have some speed in your race car as well. And if you don't have those factors the next time we come back here in November, you're probably not going to walk away with a championship. So bring your best this weekend in preparation to learn what you can before we come back here in November. But it'll be interesting to see what happens next weekend. Kyle Larson went out there last year. Will he be able to repeat? Will Ross Chastain be able to back up his win from last fall? Or can our defending Cup champ Ryan Blaney get his first win of the season at the track where he got his first title last year? We shall see. It'll be a fun race in the desert next weekend, but I'm looking forward to it. So, hope you all have a wonderful week. Subscribe, like, and congrats to Kyle Larson and the 5 team on their impressive win yesterday in Las Vegas. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!